Recently, I asked for your manga one-shot recommendations in a community tab post and got a couple of responses. A one-shot for the sake of this video is a story that starts and ends in one volume or less. So, was it a mistake, or did you peeps recommend me some diamonds in the rough? Let's find out. The first recommendation is Frankenstein by Junji Ito. The Frankenstein story itself is only 4 chapters, so I'll be including the stories from the physical Frankenstein story collection book. Those stories are Specter, Bog of Living Spirits, Pen Pal, Intruder, The Strange Tale of Oshikiri, The Strange Tale of Oshikiri the Walls, The Hell Doll Funeral, Base Firmly in Place, Boss Non Non, and lastly Hide and Seek with Boss Non Non. Let's start with the title of the book, Frankenstein. Frankenstein is Junji Ito's own retelling of the famous story by Mary Shelley. This isn't the first time Junji Ito has reimagined a story with their own twists, as they've done so with the likes of No Longer Human and even Robert Edgar's movie The Lighthouse. But I do think that Junji Ito's version of Frankenstein is one of the most faithful retellings of the story. In fact, if you've never read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein because you're allergic to words or something, then I think Ito's version is a perfectly fine supplement. The story of Frankenstein follows the young scientist Victor Frankenstein, who is chasing his creation in the Arctic. He is eventually stuck on a sheet of ice, rescued by a research crew, and recounts his story with the captain. Victor wanted to learn the secrets of life after the passing of his mother. This drives Victor to create the monster we know as Frankenstein. The night the monster awoke, it lashed out and Victor was rendered unconscious. When he wakes up the next morning, he forgets all about his creation and moves on with his life. That is, until the death of his younger brother William. The death is pinned on a maid named Justine, but the actual murderer is Victor's creation, Frankenstein. Justine is executed and Victor makes a deal with a monster of his own doing to prevent the murder of anyone else he is close to. The deal involves Victor making a wife for Frankenstein, as the monster wishes to not be alone. When the wife of Frankenstein wakes up, it lashes out at Frankenstein in a fit of deranged behavior. Frankenstein kills his wife and believes this was Victor's attempt at killing him, so he goes on to murder Victor's dad and fiance. Victor dies on the ship, and Frankenstein screams out that his creator is dead and that he is truly alone. Both tales of Frankenstein are essentially stories about gods and their creations. Ito's Frankenstein explicitly shows this when the monster references the creation of Adam and Eve from the book of Genesis. Victor plays the role of a god, unlocking the secrets of life and creating his own creature. The thing is, he had no idea the type of monster he would end up creating and would come to resent his own creation. Frankenstein acts as the creation, being rejected by society, and even his own creator turns on him, which turns him into the monster we know. In a way, the book reflects Shelley's relationship with her father, whom she dedicated her original novel to. Shelley's mother died when she gave birth, so as a result, Shelley grew close to her father, but when her father married his second wife, he prioritized his new kids over Shelley and her half-sister. If you put the father in place of Victor and Shelley in place of Frankenstein, then the inspiration behind the story becomes clear. Overall, I quite enjoyed this story, and it's probably my personal favorite Junji Ito book thus far, so it gets a score of 8 out of 10. The next story, however, is probably one of the perfect examples of why I'm not really a Junji Ito fan. Specter is the story of a young boy who murdered his best friend because he was taller than him. After digging up the body, he sees that the neck of the corpse had grown to that of a giraffe, and after that, he starts hallucinating other people with long necks. He confesses the crime to the police and believes the hallucinations are behind him. However, the police dig up the body and they see the corpse has actually grown and will possibly keep growing. This is my issue with a lot of Junji Ito stories. He's basically like that weird younger cousin that blurts something random out then runs away, and what he does with set ideas isn't that scary. Maybe I've been desensitized by the internet, but anytime I read a Junji Ito book and a scary panel pops up, I'm left stone-faced and move on to the next page. And it's not like I can't find manga scary. Blood on the Tracks is a perfect example of something that gives me goosebumps. I just think Ito's style of execution isn't for me, which is perfectly fine since it seems to work for other people. With this in mind, I give Specter a 4 out of 10. Bog of Living Spirits tells the story of a bog that that is rumored to be haunted by a spirit of a woman that lures young boys into the water, where they drown. A boy uses said story to fake his own death to escape girls who are obsessed with him, although it's shown that he may have actually died in the bog. Just like next Specter, BLS introduces an idea that Junji Ito had, but the execution of said idea doesn't work for me personally. 4 out of 10. Pen Pal tells the story of a young girl who has imaginary friends that write letters to her, but when she makes a new friend, her pen pals plot to kill her, and she unalives herself. Her new friend also receives a letter at the end of the story, hinting that the same will happen to him. I feel the same way about this story as I did with the previous two, so Pen Pal gets a 4 out of 10. Intruder tells the story of a group of kids that investigate the possibility of an alternate dimension, and what they find is the doppelganger of Oshikiri, who turns out to have murdered the other kids' doppelgangers. This story is very reminiscent of Us by Jordan Peele, but I actually quite enjoy the premise of the story. It would have benefited the story if it were longer and if the kids had seen more signs of another dimension that eventually led to the reveal of Oshikiri's doppelganger. 5 out of 10. The strange tale of Oshikiri continues the story of Intruder, and I wish it didn't. The story reveals that the alternate Oshikiri has been experimenting on people. For what reason? I don't know. STO just models the idea of Intruder and turns something that was originally clear-cut into a confusing mess. 3 out of 10. The Strange Tale of Oshikiri the Walls continues the story of Oshikiri and his doppelgangers by showing us that they travel into this world through the walls of the house. A new group of doppelgangers of his family show up to replace Oshikiri's family, but they're sucked into the walls and become a part of the house. What in the world am I reading? The Hell of the Doll Funeral is the shortest story in the Junji Ito story collection, standing at only 30 pages long. The story sees a young girl get turned into a porcelain doll because 30% of the kids in the world are going through something called dollification, and we see her parents grieve the loss of their child. Eventually, the doll becomes so distorted that they decide to cremate it. The end. It's so short that I don't really have anything to say about it. The dollification is never explained, and I'm just left with my mind thinking, why? 4 out of 10. Face Firmly in Place is another short story lasting 8 pages, and just like the previous story, I'm left unimpressed. 4 out of 10. Out of respect for Junji Ito, I'm not going to review Boss Nanan or its sequel, as it talks about the passing of their dog, so I don't feel comfortable reviewing an expression of loss. The next recommendation is Not Simple by Natsumi Ono. I'll be honest and say that I almost dropped it at the first chapter, as the pacing and art style were really messing with my head at first, but I pressed on and I'm glad I did. Not Simple follows the story of a young man named Ian who lives a not simple life. As a young boy, his mother would trade him off to men in exchange for alcohol. His father didn't care about him, his sister is actually his biological mother, and her father is actually his father or grandfather, however you want to put it. His family tree is a mess, to say the least, and a lot of stuff goes wrong in his life. Despite this, he is a light for the people around him, and inspires one of his friends to write a novel about him, which happens to be the book we're reading. While the book didn't necessarily tug at my heartstrings, I see why people would enjoy it. I also find it ironic that a book with a simple art style is telling a not so simple story. To anyone who struggled with the first chapter like I did, I would encourage you to press on to chapter 3, as I think you're rewarded for your efforts. With this in mind, I give Not Simple a 7 out of 10. The last recommendation for this video is Nude Model by Tsubasa Yamaguchi, the mangaka behind Blue Period. Like Blue Period, Nude Model uses art as a major focus in the story, but I would argue the story is more about the beginning of a friendship, with art being the vehicle to get the characters to their destination. The story follows Nico, a boy who hangs out with a group of delinquents and participates in a game simply called the Punishment Game. The game has the participant try to sleep with someone within 3 days, or else they have to pay up. Nico chooses a classmate named Natsumi, a quiet and seemingly reserved individual. When looking to find a place to hang out with the boys, Nico finds Natsumi painting. Natsumi is referencing Playboy magazines since she doesn't have a model, and Nico offers to be her model, although he mainly does so to get close to her so he can use her. Time goes by, and on that 3rd day, Nico tries to force himself on Natsumi, who nonchalantly tells him to hold that pose and begins to draw him. After the 3rd day, Nico's friends start messing with Natsumi, which causes Nico to lash out and even kick the group's leader in the face. Nico later goes to apologize to Natsumi, who reveals she knew about the punishment game, stating that they were both using each other for their bodies. Nico asks if something changed for Natsumi like it did for him, and her reply would seemingly confirm their feelings, leaving the door open for them to be friends or possibly more. I really enjoyed this story, and I'm glad it was the last one I read for this video. The way the characters were both using each other for their own means was interesting, and having art be the vehicle for this relationship to blossom felt unique in the way it was executed. The ending left me wanting more, just to see how the relationship between these two characters would continue to grow, and how art would continue to play a role in said relationship. The more I sit and think about it, the more I lean towards it being my favorite read for this video. So with this in mind, I give Nude Model an 8 out of 10. Despite me raking Junji Ito through the coals for a majority of this video, I quite enjoyed making it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye!